Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for your kind words. Echocardiography in adult congenital heart disease is a specialty. The technology of echocardiography has grown by leaps and bounds and has become an essential part of the diagnosis and surgical, non-surgical management of congenital heart diseases. So much so that it is almost threatened the supremacy of catheterization and angiogram, which is considered as a gold standard for the diagnosis of congenital heart disease. Most of the complex congenital heart diseases are dead before they celebrate their first birthday. So the adult cardiologist should know to detect the simple congenital heart diseases that end up as good, what is called as the grown-up congenital heart diseases. So that's a group itself, and their consequences and complications should be detected. George Perloff, he said, the diagnosis of cyanotic congenital heart disease represents the epitome of applied clinical logic, and correct inferences are drawn from the accurate observations, diagnosis, and made with the gratifying frequency. But today, along with the clinicals, we have the echocardiography. You name, we can detect the levocardia, dextrocardia, mesocardia, whatever the position, whatever the complex congenital heart diseases can be made of. The commonest adult congenital heart disease that we see is the atrial septal defect. However, echocardiographic evaluation of these structures is important when considering the device closure. We must know the rims and the other features. And here, this is Kurt Amplatz himself, taken in 1998, and when I visited his place where they started the devices, the place where they were producing the devices. This is a 50-year-old male, known case of AST in childhood, but no longer on a regular checkup. Recently, murmur is said to have become very loud, and early clubbing and cyanosis was present, and the JVP was raised. Parasternal heave was mild, but parasternal region, the harsh grade 3/6 ejection systolic murmur was present, split second sound was there, and P2 was normal. Cyanosis, clubbing is there in a known case of AST, but P2 is normal. That means it is not hypertension causing the right to left shunt. So what was it? And echo reported as pulmonary stenosis with the gradient of 54/20 millimeters of mercury. So the pulmonary stenosis, is it functional stenosis because of the large shunt there is a stenosis, or there is an associated pulmonary stenosis, almost what you call it as the triology. So for that, I did the echo myself. Many people think that interventional cardiologists do not do the echo, but that is wrong. Unless you do yourself, you will not know what mistakes are committed. So on a detailed interrogation, when I saw, I was surprised to see, you can see that this is the SVC. Can I have the pointer? That is the SVC, and this is the sinus venosus type of AST. It doesn't look like a big AST, but what is happening is it is straddling over the septum. When it is straddling, part of the SVC blood is going into the LA, part of it is coming into the RA. And as a result, the cyanosis and clubbing are because of this straddling. And hence, when we did the cath, we saw that the patient was suitable for surgery and he was corrected with surgical procedure. And now he is absolutely normal. This is another case, 55 years old female, complaints of dyspnea on exertion, swelling of the legs, episodes of palpitation, no history of chest pain, no syncope, history of diabetes for past 15 years. She happened to be mother of my daughter's roommate, and then on the phone call they said, auntie this, auntie that. I said, no telephonic consultation, please send it to me. Because my problem was, they had made it as a diabetic cardiomyopathy and nephropathy. That was the diagnosis by the treating clinician, as the patient has bilateral pitting edema. And when I examined, the second heart sound was split, fixed, and grade 2/6 short superficial ejection systolic murmur was present. P2 was not loud, and that is the hallmark of AST. So I did the echo, I did the TE also. There was a large AST and the rims were quite small but still adequate. So I closed with the 32 millimeter of device. So remember, diabetic cardiomyopathy doesn't affect only the right side, it is both the sides. So if you have a dilated right atrium, right ventricle, think of the AST and you have to treat the patient that way. So this is what the X-ray was before and then the after. And that's how we know the precise diagnosis is very important. So in the past we used to have residual AST after the device closure, either overestimation of the AST or underestimation. But today with the 4D echo, we can literally make out what is the size, what is the shape, how much is the rim, everything can be made out. So it is so precise. And not only that, after the device closure, when you repeat the 4D echo after 3 months, you can see whether the endothelialization has occurred completely or not. So whether to continue the aspirin or not can be decided with the 4D echo. And this is how we know, this is the post-mortem in the animal study. This is how the device looks, and this is the 4D after the device closure after the 3 months. And this is a patient, 42 years old man with the history of palpitation, exertional dyspnea, easy fatigability. In the mode, you can make out that the RV is dilated and there is a paradoxical septal movement. Once the paradoxical septal movement is there, it is an AST. And here you can see that the pulmonary artery is enlarged, and then already the AST is very large, and patient had the cyanosis. So my problem was, why the patient has got cyanosis? Is it Eisenmenger's and right to left shunt or something else? So when I did the echo, repeated the echo myself, most of the people, they just look at the 4D echo, apical 4-chamber view and leave it at that. So unless you go into the RV inflow position, you will not see the septum, that is the membrane dividing the right atrium. So when you look into the RV inflow view, then only you see the septum. So this patient had a divided right atrium, what we were calling in the past as the cor triatrium dexter. And today Bob Anderson would like to call it as a divided right atrium, divided left atrium. So this is this septum. You can see that in apical 4-chamber you are not seeing anything. But in the inflow, you are able to, RV inflow, you can see the membrane. So you can see that a thin membrane is there, and that is the one which is allowing the blood in a particular cycle of the cardiac cycle. There is some amount of blood coming into the left atrium, and that's how the cyanosis occurs. You can see in the contrast, the part of the RA, the blood is coming into the LA. So just because the cyanosis is there, don't jump to the conclusion that it is not operable. So this patient was operated and the septum was also excised, and the patient is doing well. In contrast, this patient had a fenestrated divided right atrium and already had multiple embolization into the lung, and the pulmonary hypertension was there. And we learnt a letter that this divided right atrium can cause multiple embolization and pulmonary hypertension. So I started doing the balloon septation, and then 4D echo can show you whether it is septum is intact or it is fenestrated. So this is a 22 years old lady presenting with the breathlessness, 2 years duration, diagnosed elsewhere as the severe mitral stenosis, low volume pulse, narrow pulse pressure, MDM at the apex was there, and P2 was loud. And you can clearly see that there is a divided left atrium, and this is the cor triatrium sinister, what we were calling in the past. So this is how we know what they thought as a mitral stenosis. Mitral valve is normal, but there is a membrane in the left atrium. So the patient was operated. This is the 30 years old man presented with a history of exertional breathlessness and palpitation, and repeated history of respiratory infection in the past. cyanosis, clubbing was there, split first sound was there, split second sound was there, and diagnosis said that it could be TAPVC, and after doing the echo we could see that it was an intracardiac TAPVC. So this is a 53 years old cyanotic woman. 2D echo with the color Doppler showed ostium secundum ASD with the right to left shunt, and then the patient had a common, all the pulmonary veins draining into the coronary sinus. So here, but the Crab's view is very important to make out whether the pulmonary veins are draining into the LA or not. And the Crab view is then from the suprasternal notch when you keep the probe with the pointer towards the 3 o'clock position, and that shows the pulmonary veins drainage. This is the supracardiac TAPVC operated, and this also happened to be a supracardiac TAPVC operated. In tetralogy, VST with PS, what we call as the pink fallow, is common in the adulthood. So if a patient has got a large VST with the Gassol's effect and causing the VST with the infundibular stenosis, what we call pink fallow, are seen in the adult. So we should be able to make the diagnosis. So this is a 20 years old man, had refused surgery in the past, and now he comes with the congestive cardiac failure. He was a known case of tetralogy, and what has happened is the VST, which was large, has become small, and the aneurysmal, septal aneurysm was trying to close, and hence there is a suprasystemic RV pressure causing the congestive cardiac failure. In the tetralogy of fallow, congestive cardiac failure is not a feature, but when there is a suprasystemic pressure like this, they can come in the failure. So coronary anomalies are common, but in adult, making the coronary anomaly on X-ray, on echo is very difficult. You have to go for the CT volume rendered reconstruction, and there you can see the coronary anomaly, whether any LAD or the coronary is going across the infundibulum, and this is very important. Now coming to the triology, this is one of the conditions where it is commonly seen in the adulthood. This is the 30 years old lady with 8 months amenorrhea. She was pregnant and easy fatigue, breathlessness, saturation was 72%, and the pulmonary vein gradient was a whopping 134 millimeters of mercury with the severe TR. So emergency balloon valvoplasty was done covering the abdomen to protect the fetus, and then the gradient came down, the TR came down, and the patient had a normal delivery. This is a 52 years old male presented with the complaints of palpitation since childhood, fatigue 1 year, dyspnea for 1 year, orthopnea and PND for last 1 month. And you may be surprised, a 52 years old man with the loud P2, apex beat was in 6th axillary, and the long harsh systolic murmur was there. Look at that. In a parasternal long axis, you see one jet in the RV, one jet in the LV. The AR is there on the LV side, and then the VST jet is seen on the RV side. And when you see in the short axis, you can see that there is a perimembranous VST which is a closing in. And because the cusp prolapse is occurring, and that cusp prolapse is trying to close the VST at the cost of AR. So here what they left as a small VST in the childhood, now it has become a VST with the aortic regurgitation. So now we have to do the valve replacement as well as the VST closure. So instead of that, if you close in the childhood, the patient will not come with the AR. So the message is echo can detect the cause of the AR so that the decision can be taken for the management, whether the repair has to be done or the replacement. This is a picture from my textbook, and here you can see that whenever the VST becomes small, because of the Venturi effect, the aortic cusp will be prolapsing, and this prolapsing cusp can cause the AR, or it can protrude into the RV side and causing the VST closure, what we call as the small VST. When the surgeon lifts the prolapsed cusp, in fact the VST will be much bigger than what we detect on the echo. So echo will be underestimating whenever there is a aortic cusp prolapse. So the moment the aortic regurgitation occurs, the patient has to be treated. This is the 36 years old female presented with the history of exertional breathlessness. Pulse rate was 90, collapsing, 130 by 60 millimeters of mercury. And here you can see that there is a large PDA with the pulmonary hypertension. At a particular time, there is a right to left shunt. You can see that in PDA, always it is left to right shunt. Whereas here, it is from the pulmonary artery that the jet is going into the aorta. So, and this is the suprasternal view, which is also below that we have the ductal view. So, in case of adult, you have to do the suprasternal, ductal view as well as the short axis view, and all the views must be done to decide whether it is suitable for the device closure, how much is the ampulla, all can be measured. So, the suprasternal view as well as the modified high ductal views are very important. This is the 25 years old male presented with the chest pain. So, young person presenting with the chest pain, the ischemia, that means you have to think of other than the ischemic heart disease. And when you look at the echo, you can see that RV side, there is something abnormal. If you have the pointer, I would be very happy. So, you can see that there is something abnormal going on the RV side. And then when you do the apical fourth chamber, you can see that there is a glistening endocardium. Once the glistening endocardium is there, that means there is an ischemia of a long-standing ischemia. And here you can again see that there is something, multiple channels are seen on the RV side. When we did the short axis, you can see that the right coronary artery is dilated, and apart from that, there is a continuous Doppler, and what you see is something entering into the pulmonary artery. So, what is entering? This is the coronary cameral fistula opening into the pulmonary artery, and this is in an adult. So, this is how we should keep our mind open. This is a 20 years old person, came with the blurring of vision and for the past 2 years. And they suspected, they went to the Minto hospital and they saw the subluxation of the lens was there, and then they referred the patient to me. And here you can see that the dilated aorta is there, aortic regurgitation is there, and in the short axis you can see that there is a flap, and in the arch as well as the abdominal aorta, the dissection was extending right up to the bifurcation. And here in the short axis you can see that the dissection flap is there, bicuspid aortic valve is there, and the severe aortic regurgitation is there. So, all this is in a Marfan syndrome with the dissection. So, here this patient had come with the severe, to and fro murmur. Once you hear a to and fro murmur in adult patient, you must think of ASAR, or you must think of the subaortic membrane with the AR, or VSD with AR. These are the three things should come to your mind, and you can see that there is a subaortic membrane just below the aortic cusp, and that's the membrane. So, many a times this membrane, what is small, it can go on extending, and then you can see that a tunnel-like structure forms and it becomes thick. So, what excision of the membrane could have been done, it ends up with the tunnel, and then the membrane becomes almost like a tunnel. This patient, you can see that it just opening is there and the tunnel has become so thick, and the gradient was 168. So, here it was causing problem with the aortic valve as well as the mitral valve, and surgical excision had to be done. So, this is definitely everybody will know that this is the hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, and what is important is we always think of the LVOT obstruction, and in this patient the RVOT obstruction also was there. So, that is the severe one, and that's how we know we have to measure the septum as well as the other portion. This is the suprasternal long axis view, and you can see that these are the cephalic vessels, and then there is a narrowing at this level, and with the color Doppler you can see that there is a coarctation. Coarctation is very important. In my own experience in 1992, I had done the aortoplasty in a 22 years old gardener, and now his son, afterwards he did his MBBS from Calcutta Medical College, and now he's practicing in Delhi. So, this is how his patient was, his BP was 220 by 120 when I diagnosed in 1990. So, this is how the coarctation should not be missed. Feel the lower limb pulse and you'll never miss the diagnosis. So, I say be Indian, touch the feet, and you'll never miss the diagnosis of coarctation. But in complex coarctation, with the aneurysm, the CT or the MRI are important. And this is the patient, 20 years old man, treated, operated for the tetralogy of Fallot. Now he has come with the collapsing pulse and to and fro murmur. I said to and fro murmur, differential diagnosis is VST AR. And you can see that there are two jets are coming. One during the systole, the jet is going into the RV. Another jet is going along with the septum in the diastole. So this is the aortic regurgitation, that is the residual VST. And this is the patch of the VST closure, that is a dynamic obstruction and the adynamic. So here this portion of the septum is not moving because that's a Dacron patch. The rest of it is hypermoving. So this is how we know if you have a to and fro murmur, you must carefully look which is the systole and which is the diastole. So gone are the days when you used to wait for the histopathology, and today absent pulmonary valve is a known thing to occur. And here you can see that the annular narrowing calls the stenosis, and there is a free pulmonary regurgitation because there is no valve. And this absent pulmonary valve in tetralogy of Fallot with the PS and PR, either surgical correction or even the transcatheter valve replacement can be done. So this is the 30 years old surgically corrected tetralogy of Fallot, and again it shows the pulmonary stenosis and regurgitation, and then patient underwent the valve replacement. And this is a 28 years old tetralogy repaired again residual VST, and the residual VST can be closed with the device instead of sending for the redo surgery. So 32 years old tetralogy of Fallot, pulmonary atresia already treated, and the patient was pregnant, and she came with the preconception transthoracic echocardiogram with the reduced LV function. So we said no chance of having the child because the mortality is both for the fetus as well as for the mother, it's very high. And the ventricular tachycardia showing this patient, then especially the arrhythmogenic right ventricle are common in the adult. Corrected transposition of congenital heart disease is very common in the adult, and you can see that the valve which is more towards the apex, that is the tricuspid valve. So that means the LV is replaced by the morphological right ventricle, and the morphological left ventricle is on this side. And with the position of the tricuspid, you can make out, and invariably they'll have in the same day Tachy-Brady syndrome. One they have come with bradycardia, another time tachycardia, and invariably they'll have the VST PS associated with them. So here you can see that the VST PS was present in this patient and was treated. So pregnancy with CTGV is difficult, and this is the tricuspid atresia in 20 years old lady, unoperated, and she wanted to become pregnant. We said no, and that's how we know. Epstein's anomaly is another condition where it is seen in the adult, and especially here you have to make out whether the RV is adequate or not, otherwise they have to go for the repair. So apart from the Epstein's anomaly, the patient also had a divided right atrium in this patient, and it was operated and corrected. So very high risk for the continuing the pregnancy in this patient, so we have to treat before that. So 45 years old man presenting with the hypoxemia due to the platinopia and orthodexia, and improved after the successful closure of the PFO with the device. And this is the 36 years old lady with the episodes of wide QRS complexes and atrial flutter, and then she had a VT, and this is how we know arrhythmic problems can occur in the adult, and the post operation RV function should be detected. So the last but not the least, the tricuspid annular plane excursion, that is called as the TAPSE, has to be done, especially to know the RV function. But gone are the day when we used to depend on that. Now we have the 4D echo with just a click. You can see the even the complex position of the RV, the function can be made out. This patient had a 41% ejection fraction, and then the we have to treat the tricuspid annulus also. So adult presentations invariably RVOT obstruction, pulmonary and tricuspid regurgitation, RV, LV dysfunction, atrial ventricular arrhythmia, unrepaired, insignificant morbidity, considered high risk for the repair. And last one is this is the Eisenmenger's and that should not happen. The most beautiful lady, Madhubala, we lost her because of the Eisenmengers. And here what you see is, always we talk about the RA collapse and the RV collapse, and here you can see that there is a LV collapse. The LV collapse is because of the suprasystemic PA pressure. So here Eisenmenger, no, as on today, no patient should go for the Eisenmengers. So this is how 2D, 3D, 4D echoes, and then we have CT, MRI, all are helping us to make the precise diagnosis in time and treat them in time. And thank you very much for your kind patient hearing, because pathologist makes the perfect diagnosis, alas, one day later, but echocardiographer makes the diagnosis not so perfect, but to save the precious life in time. Thank you very much for your kind and the patient hearing. Thank you.